Scarlet, you can't stand on the desk. Do you want me to put you down?
And we're back with plus
Welcome
one.
to No Direction, the Pathfinder News, Reviews, and Interviews podcast. I'm Ryan Costello.
And I'm Jefferson J. Thacker, also known as Param.
This is Scarlet, and she is Grabby. Okay, she wanted me to open the drawer under my monitor. Crisis not averted.
Well, we aren't just joined by Scarlet, we are also joined by Paizo Editor-in-Chief F. Wesley Schneider. Hello, Wes.
Hey, everybody. Hey, guys. Thanks for having me.
Chat for a little bit before we get the official start going, because somebody is being grabby.
Yeah. Just for those of you, this is bonus content for the live audience. For those of you who weren't aware and didn't, and just now holy crap, a lot of you all stayed. Great, thanks, guys. We were having technical difficulties. We have seemed to work them out. We didn't do anything. It just magically started working, which is things I don't like to talk about with tech. So as soon as we get the halfling out of the room, we can start the episode proper.
Coming upstairs. She'll be happy to know that Scarlet has permanent marker on her fingers now.
Oh, that's great.
Nice.
Here, Scarlet, how about a highlighter?
I always felt that arcade would look better, magenta.
Wes, why don't you tell us a story?
Let's see. If you guys don't know already, several years ago we hired this drifter at Paizo. I've never really gotten his first name because he mumbles a lot, but I'm pretty sure the last name is Daigle. And I think it was mostly migrating north because you would think that, if you didn't have really, permanent shelter, you might go south, but little kind of doesn't have it all together. But after working with us for about a year, we put him to work, clearly. We've got plenty to do. After about a year of him working there, he started to put together a very specific sort of playlists. And he ended up playing a lot of carnival music and Mardi Gras music. And we hadn't really put it together when we hired him, but Daigle, when he was growing up, lived in the area around New Orleans. And so he and his friends would go to Mardi Gras every year. So it got to the point where after spending a year in the Seattle area, which, if you don't know, significantly different from the New Orleans area, and, doesn't have really much of a Mardi Gras celebration. Not going to say doesn't have any, but doesn't have much of one. It became pretty obvious that, Adam was getting a little homesick for that sort of thing. So Seattle being more than a little bit of a foodie town, a few of us looked around and we found a really freaking great New Orleans restaurant here called Marcella's. And we went, and oh my god, they had a brass band, they had shrimp and redfish and alligator that they had just had flown up, and they did this giant Mardi Gras celebration. So that was 6 years ago. Every year since, myself, Adam, editor Judy Bauer, and just a bunch of the rest of us end up going out every Mardi Gras with Adam to Marcella's for this big Mardi Gras celebration. So that was just last night, and we realized that was our 6th year in a row. We've got a plaque with our names on the wall. We've actually, a few of us have 2 plaques with different names, but we haven't told the owner yet. The owner, Antoine, is this is this guy who we only see once a year, and it's he doesn't remember us, but maybe at this point he does, but he's just one of these guys who's always oh, my friends, it's so good to see you. Your name's John, right? No, it's Wes. Oh, no, Wes, I remember your name totally. So, yeah, we just did that last night, and there's hurricanes and a lot of drinking and whatnot, but it's really a freaking blast. And it's just so weird because that's something I never experienced growing up, but every time we go, Adam points at stuff on the wall and is just this is this, or this is the the story behind this or that, or this is how, like, this is why it's a legit, like, Mardi Gras carnival sort of celebration thing. So it's a weird tradition for a game company, especially a game company in, like, frickin' Seattle. But yeah, Mardi Gras is kind of a big deal for us, and that was just yesterday. So we're all getting over our hangovers.
Oh, great. Great.
I like that story. That's
It's a good story.
That's nice.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of information I didn't know about you.
All right. I need to make a silence edit point. Okay, that should be long enough. And we're back.
Welcome to No Direction, the Pathfinder News, Reviews, and Interviews podcast. I'm Ryan Costello.
And I'm Jefferson J. Thacker, also known as Parham.
Dynamite, the publisher of the Pathfinder comics, recently announced that the next Pathfinder miniseries that will follow Worldscape, which has one more issue left to go, will be Pathfinder Rune Scars. It's co-written by Starfinder's creative director James Sutter and by the man we have with us today, Pathfinder's editor-in-chief, our guest, F. Wesley Schneider. Welcome back, Wes.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for having me back.
How you feeling?
Pretty good. Pretty good.
Now, I called you Pathfinder's editor-in-chief, which is always how it used to be written on the Contact Us page, but I know that with Starfinder now, titles are kind of being warped, so what are you officially?
Paizo's editor-in-chief now.
All right.
Yeah.
I'm going to highlight that.
Way more. A whole new brand of horrible responsibility.
Well, we might have to ask you about what the differences is later. But
Cool.
For any of our audience who doesn't know who you are, or what you do, or might be joining us for the first time, which is absolutely nobody in the live chat, could you tell us, exactly who you are and what you do for Paizo?
So, like you said, I'm F. Wesley Schneider. I have been working at Paizo for something to the tune of 15 years now, ever since back when we were doing Dragon and Dungeon magazine. Skip through all the interim years. But now I'm the editor-in-chief at Paizo Inc. I am directly in charge of our editors and our project management and our development. So pretty much all the folks that run our adventure path line or our player companions or Starfinder or a bunch of that stuff, I oversee their day-to-day work directly, but then also as the head of the editorial department, pretty much any book that needs editing or any project that needs editing, so whether it's a hardcover book or like a Pathfinder Society PDF or whatever have you, that all goes through my department. So it's my department's jobs to pretty much make sure that anything that has words in it gets, designed, written, directed out the door at the high quality that you've all come to know and expect.
Can you
Trying to think of any product that has no words. Like even the Wayne Reynolds coffee table book had words in it.
Truth be told, we have a few blogs that we just let go out the door, but besides that, it's pretty much everything.
Okay.
What? Oh
That's
my
right.
goodness.
Shoot, you would even think like our pawns and whatnot. Our pawns are one of the most challenging things that we put together. You would think it would be so simple, but...
Wait, no. I'm super curious now. What goes into making one of those?
Oh, the weird thing with the pawn collection... Okay, so first of all, Jessica Price, our project manager, several years ago outlawed the word easy in relation to projects. Like anytime myself or my boss Eric, our publisher, or anybody on staff is just like, oh no, that'll be easy, that won't take much. I mean, she gets like visibly, it just like sits straight up and it's just like, no, don't say that word. It's like, but no, the pawns are interesting because I mean, there's this neat little accessory where it's like, hey, for the price of 3 or 4 miniatures, wouldn't you rather have like 300 miniatures? I mean, they're cardboard and whatnot, but they've got great art on them and they stand up and you can move them around and it looks sharp. So, the interesting thing about them is, and I apologize already, this gets deep into just like process and like printing and whatnot, but
That's why we're here.
but we have to know ahead of time we have a number of die lines for the pages of the pawns. So there is never going to be a sheet of pawns fits, let's see if I can get this right, something to the tune of like 36 medium pawns.
That was going to be my estimate too, so probably.
So something to that tune. You will never get a pawn sheet that has 35 or 37. Because 37 won't fit, and 37 or 35 isn't enough. So we've got 36 is the number of medium pawns that we can fit on one of those sheets. Useful, but sometimes we want to get small pawns out there as well. So, but maybe not a whole page or whatever have you. So we have to make another specific sheet for smalls. Or if we want to have a sheet that's half smalls and half mediums, or larges, or huges, or colossals, which we've never done. We talked about it one time. Maybe it's like, oh, we could do a whole sheet that's a colossal, and then we stopped smoking crack and didn't do that. But so it becomes very much this puzzle for a few different vectors. One, how many pawns of what sizes can you fit into a collection that has 8 sheets, or a box that has, I think, 16 sheets, maybe more. But how many of everything that you can fit on into there? Do we need to create a different die for something? And then it becomes even more complicated once you get into like, oh, we're doing a pawn collection for the adventure path. This one encounter has like 15 goblins in it. Do we really want to put 15 goblins into this thing? Or so on and so on. So it's just this big elaborate puzzle. And then we try to keep things together, so there's a lot of layout snafus. So if we need to take one thing out or put one thing back in, then pretty much the whole set needs to get laid out. And yeah, so what you see at the end, comes together really nicely and looks like it's all been thought out and is very clean, and like similar images will be next to each other, and you'll never have like one image over here and another image of the same thing 5 pages later. But in the production of it, sometimes things happen or come up, or there's misnumbering or whatever have you. So it just becomes this complicated thing. And that, to actually hopefully make this insightful at the end, and that's all stuff that our editors do. So even though there's not many words to the whole things, our editors are way more about just making sure everything's spelled correctly. They're making sure that the end user experience is something that makes sense and is easy to interface with and to organize and is put together from a place of sanity, and not just like, we had art, we put it on some sheets, enjoy. So,
and just to kind of confirm the parameters of an editor. So then if WizKids or Reaper, one of your miniatures partners, hears about this product and is upset about it, you don't have to deal with that.
Well,
oh, all right.
Well, the nice thing was with the pawns, I mean, that's something produced by Paizo. So we don't have to worry about, like any of our licensors getting riled up about the pawn collections. But I mean, we definitely do put together packaging for the no, hold on. Yeah, I think we put together our own. Now I'm spacing on whether or not we put together our packaging for like the miniatures and whatnot. That might be WizKids teams. So fortunately, we usually don't have a lot of stuff that's going through our editorial operation that needs to adhere to another company's standards. But I like to think that our standards are pretty freaking high. So even if that were the case, they'd have no reason. They'd have no reason to be anything but pleased.
And then who edits the Pathfinder comics?
Ooh, that's interesting. Short answer, Dynamite edits the Pathfinder comics. Longer answer, the Pathfinder comics go through one might say arduous review process whereby one person writes it, but then it gets read through by myself, Eric Mona, James Jacobs, and James Sutter. So all 4 of us read through and make comments. 3 of those folks have for decades been editors, And one of those folks has for decades put together books and has also done a fair share of editing himself and is our creative director. So everyone at the table has strong opinions, and not a single one of them can let a typo go by. So the scripts that get handed over to Dynamite, I would be shocked if they were not like in the top 1% of clean handovers that Dynamite receives. But we do a lot in-house before we send off anything, since we're really passionate about our own brand, and we're doing a bunch of the writing for it. I mean, that's sort of why we're doing a bunch of the writing for it. The Pathfinder comics, that is. But yeah, after we've gone through all that, we send it off to them, and yeah, they put together, like, they've got a really awesome operation over there, and we've been really pleased with the high quality of content and material they've been turning out.
And you say you've been writing for them. Tell us about that.
That's true. How long have I been writing for them now?
I want to say 4 years.
Yeah, something to that tune now. I mean, it started off with, we had Jim Zub, who's now writes everything. Jim has 2 or 3 of his own creator-owned brands now. He's doing Thunderbolts for Marvel. He was working with Disney, doing the Figment comic for a while and whatnot. So Jim's been just all over the place. So at some point, even though Jim's a big Pathfinder fan and a personal friend of a lot of ours, it's just sort of but other opportunities. So he's moved on, and we were talking about well, who should we get to write this after Jim? And Eric has always been a huge comic book fan. Sutter and myself have also been big into comics, and we're really excited to maybe try out doing that, since we're inclined towards prose and fiction. So it's that seems like an interesting challenge. Let's check that out. Excuse me. So it was when Dynamite did a one-off series called Pathfinder Goblins, where there were a whole bunch of little short comics all themed around goblins. And I did one, and Eric did one, and Sutter did one, and nobody told us that they sucked. So then when the opportunity came up to do another series that was Pathfinder Origins, Eric, Sutter, and myself split up that whole series, exploring some of the backgrounds of the various iconic characters. I wrote the backstory for both Sione and Harsk. Harsk with, more than a little bit of cameo from Linny in there, and that ended up being a ton of fun. So after that, Dynamite was like, hey, this is going well. We'd love to have you guys do more. Maybe this time a coherent story instead of sort of just these vignettes. So after that, we pitched Hollow Mountain, and that was the 3 of us working on a 6-part series again. And it was, this time around, it's we want to actually tell a story that is the Pathfinder experience. We want to have, monsters and dungeons and heroes and so on and so forth. And we also want to introduce some of the other iconics and pull in some of the other ones that we've played with before. So we started pulling in Celtial, who's my personal favorite iconic, and then a bunch of the other more dastardly iconics like Melagaster, the Mesmerist, and Olak, the War Priest, and Damiel, the serial killer, they had their whole adventure there in Hollow Mountain, where we got to explore a Thessalonian dungeon in Varissia, and that was a ton of fun. And folks really seemed to dig that. So after that, Eric, who deals with a lot of our licensings and whatnot, Eric is a huge fan of pulp fantasy and stories you've never heard of from the 20s. And they're really interesting. Some of them are, to be perfectly honest, some of them are just what Just inconceivable how they ever got written. But then, this is the generation where you've got like Lovecraft and Howard and H.G. Wells before that writing. These are the days of like amazing stories and planet stories and whatnot. So Eric loves these old stories and old comics and whatnot. So he pitched a story to Dynamite called Worldscape, where it explains a lot about the Spire of Nex outside of Absalom and how like the wizard Nex created this essentially whole world that is pulling in the greatest heroes from 3 worlds to create these like unstoppable armies that would allow him to besiege and essentially take over Absalom. Well, that didn't go so well for him, and he eventually faded into existence, but his world machine kept going, and it created this space called the Worldscape. And that's the story that Eric ends up telling in the Worldscape series, where the Pathfinder iconics get drawn into the Worldscape and end up having adventures with like Red Sonja and John Carter of Mars and Tars Tarkas and eventually Tarzan's in there and like all these other obscure characters from the pulps and science fiction and fantasy history. And they have this really sort of like just this bizarre adventure that's just pulling in all of these characters that you know about or have almost certainly heard of. So it's really getting to play with a bunch of interesting figures from the history of science fiction and fantasy. So that's fascinating, and that's going on right now, and it's been really cool. Eric's just about done with all of the writing on the thing, so he's glad to be out of it.
Just about done with the writing, because the 5th issue is out, so there's only the 1 issue left.
Yeah, but there's all these other little tertiary things where it's just like there's a few specials and whatnot that they're putting out, and then Dynamite just did a Worldscape Kickstarter last month, which we did some streaming as part of, and that we contributed some books to.
Humble Bundle, right? Not a Kickstarter.
Yes, I'm sorry, not Kickstarter, Humble Bundle. Yes, absolutely. The thing on the internets, whatever. Yeah, we did that last month, and there's still a few like little promo things that are tied into Worldscape that they're almost done. They're wrapping up. They'll be great. And they'll totally be finished soon. So he's just got a few of those things still hanging over him, but then he's out. But Dynamite turns to us and is like, "So what's next?" And Eric is just like, "I just want to die." He's been at this for months now, and Eric is like he is a crazy researcher and outliner. So I mean, if every one of these comic books has 10,000 words in them, and that's generous, 5,000 words in them, Eric must have 50,000 words of research and notes and histories and just character backstories and references. I mean, nothing is in Worldscape that is just there by happenstance or by accident. I mean, dude has spent some time on this. So I think he's excited to, maybe see his girlfriend again, eat a meal, that sort of thing.
And so you decided you didn't have anything better to do, so you're going to write now?
Well, so that was sort of the thing. They were like, "So what's next?" And Sutter and I, since we had been working on the comics before, and Eric was really passionate about doing Worldscape. I mean, there was not even any question there. It was just like, Eric was like, "I have a crazy idea for Worldscape. I want to do this by myself." And Sutter and I were both just like, "Yeah, that's enjoy." So that was 100% his baby. But now it's just like, okay, but we want to do something different now. We've done the weird thing. We want to get back to Galarian and our characters and having adventures and the world that we've built. So Sutter and I were on deck for that. So we stepped up and we're doing a 5-issue series that just got announced by Dynamite called Rune Scars.
Now, I hear Rune Scars, and I feel like it should be related to the Rune Lords, but they're not mentioned anywhere in the write-up for the series.
Well, that's true. It's pretty interesting because runes have really come up in a lot of different ways in the Pathfinder world. I mean, certainly since the very beginning with Thassalon and Varisia and all of that. But sort of even before that, 2 of the first images that we ever had for the Pathfinder role-playing game were sketches done by Wayne Reynolds of our iconic fighter and our iconic sorcerer. And while we wanted our iconic fighter to be very much sort of a Mad Mardigan style character, and I think everybody, if you hold up the 2 characters next to each other, can be like, oh, similarities. Our sorcerer, we sort of let Wayne loose on. Sean Glenn, who was our art director at the time, had a really good working relationship with Wayne and was just like, hey, we've got a dude, we want a woman for this. We're thinking maybe something a little more, less armored and whatnot, and maybe tattoos or something. Go for it. So Wayne tinkered around with that, and we got the first sketches of the character that would be our sorceress, Sione. Well, it's been interesting because, like so much of Wayne's work, you can really fall into the nuances. I mean, just the number of little trinkets and items and details and dealies on the whole thing. I mean, trying to explain where everything comes from and like what the meaning of everything is. I mean, you could spend just hours doing that. And fortunately, we didn't really have a campaign setting at the time, so it was really convenient to have these nice little launch pads where, like, we have no idea what that is. Let's latch onto that and figure it out. And Sione was fantastic for that, because out of her get-up, out of her tattoos and whatnot, we started to hit on these themes of tattooed sorcerer, or these runes, a more lightly garbed sort of look for the character, and her culture and whatnot. So it gave us a ton of details that we gradually wove into Rise of the Rune Lords and the world since then. But there's always been this mystery of why would Varisians cover their bodies with tattoos? Tattooing is not a tradition for sorcerers all across Golarion. It's just something that the Varisians do. And we've touched on that in some places, but we've never really explored it too terribly much. And when I wrote my comic for Pathfinder Origins, my story was about Sione first traveling to Korvosa before she was really an adventurer, and going to the museum there in Korvosa and trying to just figure out more about what the deal is with her tattoos, and the history of them and whatnot. And we ended up adopting that sort of seed as something of the basis for what we wanted to continue to explore with Rune Scars. So what you're going to see is Sione coming back to Korvosa along with the heroes that she's been adventuring with for a good long while now. And it brings up a lot of the questions that, or a lot of the topics that Pathfinder Origins #3 brings up. Just the questions of, what is the story behind these tattoos? What is the situation with why Varisians continue to sort of mark themselves? What does that mean for a people and a country that has ancient intrinsic ties to these rune-using magic, like nefarious wizards from the ancient past? What is the story there? But then also in sort of a more character development perspective. It also plays with just themes of family, which is something that not many of our iconic characters really have built into them, but Sione does. She has a tradition of being a Vrisian, being a wanderer. Pathfinder Origins 3 sets up her brother Tiro. So some of those elements come back, and you really get to see what it's like to be an adventurer, but when you also have these connections beyond just, you know, the people in your murder party.
Now,
I think one of the strengths of the Pathfinder comics is just how character-driven they are, and how this is your opportunity to really develop the characters too. So not only are the plots really focused about figuring out who the characters are, and it's entertaining in that way, but like it's not like you're just looking through their backgrounds and saying like, okay, now we're going to have that scene. No, you are developing these characters in ways that we never saw fleshed out before.
Well, that's one of the really fun parts about these, about working with the comics, and in fiction to an extent as well, where when we're doing an adventure, when we're doing a world book, we're really taking the satellite view of the whole city or the whole world or the whole dungeon or whatever it might be, and we're looking down on it and we're giving you the hard facts. Here's the details. Here's this. Here's this. You're the GM. Mysteries are for other people. Here's the deal. But what we don't spend a ton of time on, because largely we leave it up to the game masters, is deciding a lot of the interpersonal interplay, setting up what the characterizations of the NPCs are, and just also, frankly, the characters who have the characters who should be the most dynamic are the PCs. So we don't really get to play with the most important characters in an adventure at all. The comic gives us the opportunity to take much more of a street level view. Instead of seeing Korvosa, and that's pretty literal in some ways, instead of, presenting Korvosa as a city and a piece of art, or, like a half-page piece of art, or looking down on it from a map, all of our presentations of Korvosa are very much from the street level. And that street level view is something that we try to take when we're exploring the city, both in an artistic sensibility, but also in a writing capability or fashion. Because you've got everybody there, and they're in their skins, and they are surrounded by this world, and it's real for them. So they get to interact with the world in a much more nuanced, a much more fine degree sort of way than we ever get to play with it any other way. And one of the other nice things, and I mean, this seems sort of obvious, but it's something that's somewhat novel for us since we don't do a lot of dialogue, is the way we're telling the story is through the Iconics' perspectives in their own voices. So we spend a lot of time between myself, James Jacobs, James Sutter, Eric Mona, going back and forth between, well, I don't think that, Mauricio would say it like that, or I don't think Kira would really use that turn of phrase, or that makes Valorous seem too dumb. I mean, there's even a few jokes in there where, like, we do a lot of, like, meta game, like, riffing or just jokes just to entertain ourselves. Like, Valeros, we give him a lot of crap about being the dumb one, but he's got, like, an intelligence of 12 or 13, so he's not stupid. So I think in Hollow Mountain somewhere there's a bit about just, like, him standing up for himself and just being like, what? I'm not stupid. But anyway. But yeah, so it's really pretty novel for us to get to play with these characters that we've been working with and we've been seeing for so long and really define their voices, their characters, their motivations. And in some cases, like, their sensitivities and what they're passionate about and what their goals are. I mean, we've certainly seen that with Kira and Mauricio have gotten together and are having a relationship. And I mean, that's something that grew out of these comics. Like, before that, we'd never really talked about Kira and Mauricio's sexuality. Well, now it's just sort of a taken for granted thing that is like, oh yeah, Kira and Mauricio are in a relationship, and they have been for a long time. By the converse of that, I think a lot of people probably expected us to put Valeros and Sione together. I mean, they're two different genders, and they've been in the same frame for more than 3 times. I mean, of course, that's what you do. I mean, and that's something that we felt pretty strongly that we don't want to do. That we want their relationship to be more friendly. And then also just playing with some other expectations. I mean, Valeros, I have to say, is pretty stock in a lot of ways. I mean, he's the bumbling, drinking, mad Mardigan fighter that we always wanted. But he's still, but he's got a heart of gold. Sione, though, is the one that I think we get a lot of criticism because she does have an outfit that's showing a lot of skin. She's got...
Just say it's not her skin.
I think people looked at her certainly 6 or 7 years ago and were like, oh, okay, and they have their cheesecake character. And even going back and looking at her, it's like, we probably would have done some things differently today than we did at the time. But definitely through my writing about her, and just through the entire group's work, we've tried to find reasonings for why would she dress like this? Why is this part of the culture? Why is this the tradition? I mean, that's part of the things that we do working in a shared world setting, is that you're never going to love 100% of what's out there. But if you can take something that you're not 100% happy with and then spin it and make it part of the story and develop it and turn it into something cool, it takes something that could have been suboptimal and really turn it into a nuanced, interesting part of the setting. So Sione has some elements of that, and now we've turned her into pretty much the character who's the de facto leader of the group and is this powerful sorcerer and is not really a character who we've ever made a sexualized character in any way, and she's strong and cool and interesting, and we've tried to very much make her the focus of a number of the stories so far, but with Rune Scars more than ever before, this is really her story.
It was funny in the original cast you had the 2 casters instead of just having the 4 iconic roles, but we haven't seen Ezrin in a series, and we haven't seen Harsk in 2 miniseries now, so are we going to see these characters back?
So that's been interesting. We had a long discussion about the number of characters in the comics, and what was coming up was, especially during the conversation started in Hollow Mountain because we knew that we were going to be introducing another 4 iconic characters, and it was pretty much so we've got a pool of 6 good guy iconics that we've introduced with the core 4 and Ezrin the Wizard and Harsk the Ranger. And Linny's also out there as well. And oh god, and I guess we have introduced Sela's out there as well somewhere. And god, Amir. So we've got a ton. We've got a ton of characters. And then we knew that we were going to be introducing 3 more plus bringing Celtiel back. So it was just getting to be a lot. And it was by the time we have the 4 heroic iconics and the 4 dastardly iconics, well, if there's also Ezrin in there and Harsk, you're getting to have a big cast. And then you want to have something for everybody to do in every issue. So, blah, 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 blah. So we just decided, it's you know what? Ezrin has just become a Pathfinder. He's got some stuff to do. Harsk, honestly, his ballywick is more out in the woods than in the dungeon, so he can go have exciting dwarf times. So let's whittle things down to just kind of your core unit there. So we did that for Hollow Mountain. And then Eric continued that with Worldscape. There was actually a point in Worldscape where Ezrin was going to have his own sort of subplot. There was going to be a little bit of a meanwhile back at the ranch thing going on with Ezrin exploring how to get them back. But that was just one of these things where as soon as you're dealing with a limited number of pages and a limited number of issues, you've got to sometimes make some hard chops, some hard edits. So he was going to come back, but then that just drifted out of there. Now for Rune Scars, we're looking at our cast again, and at this point, we've got Valeros, we've got Sione, we've got Kira, and we've got Mauricio, and they've been in it since the beginning, and folks get them, and they're established, and we sort of don't want to muck with that. So we definitely want those four. But we had some room to bring back a little more, or to bring up a little more. So this time around, we're exploring Corvosa, which, has a ton of characters in it, and maybe more definition than any other city in the whole Pathfinder world, and especially with Curse of the Crimson Throne and just having redone that last year, we really wanted to put some prominence and hype on the city and some elements that folks would expect from Corvosa, but also the Curse of the Crimson Throne adventure path. So we wanted to play with elements that are going on during that adventure path. So we start drawing in a few things. So you can expect to see there's going to be some Hell Knight vibes in there. There's going to be maybe some Grey Maiden stuff in there. And there's going to be a little bit of getting away from just pulling in the same iconics over and over again. Because we do want to give cool characters like Hell Knights, like Grey Maidens, like Varisians, some center stage in a way that we haven't been able to so far, just sticking to the iconics. That's not to say that there's not going to be any new iconics in this one, though. So, hasn't been announced yet, but I don't think I'm going to get in any trouble for saying it. But James Sutter is a huge fan of the Investigator from the Advanced Class Guide. And he and I went around and around on who we should bring in. And at the end, it was just like, you know what? We're doing an urban adventure. We've got a little bit of a mystery going on. Why not bring in Quinn, our investigator? He looks cool. He looks distinctive. Lord knows that the assortment of characters that we have now could really stand to have a little more diversity in it. So we decided to get him in there, and I've already written the first issue, and oh my god, is it fun to write that character. So Quinn's going to be a major part of it going through, and he's going to run in to the Pathfinder iconic characters that we've had in there so far. And it's interesting because he's coming in sort of as I know the city, I know what's up, I'm a detective, so I've got a badge, so why are you even trying to mess with me? But also, for a human, he's on the older end of the spectrum. He's not Ezrin old, but he's been around the block a few times, so he comes in playing a little more serious, a little more adult role than certainly Mauricio and Valeros are used to having. So there's some interesting interplays that you get in there, particularly between Quinn and Mauricio, because even though Mauricio is technically older than Quinn, being an elf, she's still very brash and very bombastic. And also, she's a rogue. She's a freaking criminal. So playing that against the, somewhat salty, knows the ropes, no nonsense law enforcer, who, he's a law enforcer, but he's a detective. So he's not working for the man exactly, but he knows the ins and outs of things. So he's brought a really interesting angle to the team, and it's good. It's going to be fun to play with, and it's going to be fun to see how it unfolds.
Now, I'm kind of getting the impression, is he going to be the point of view character?
Oh, well, the nice thing with the comics is the point of view is sort of perpetually over the group's shoulder. So we've got the opportunity throughout the entire thing to sort of dodge around on what exchanges and interplays we're focusing on, and he'll be a major point of that, but you're still going to see just as much attention given to the core iconics as before. But largely think of it in the same way as when we introduced Harsk or Esdrin to the team. I mean, he's just going to kind of. There's a very sort of neat way that he gets involved with everything, and then he's part of the team.
Now, you haven't mentioned Celtial in about 20 minutes, and I just want to make sure, is Celtial in this?
You remember that part where it was like we went around and around on like what other iconics to introduce? So at the moment, no. Celtial doesn't have a role in this one. But it's all a bargaining thing when you're working. Like Sutter and I have been working together for like 300 years at this point. So, I mean, we both have a very like, okay, you're going to want to do this, this, and this. I'm going to want to do this, this, and this. You think 3 of my things are dumb. I think 3 of your things are dumb. So let's bargain. So, and that's just sort of a natural thing for us now. And while there was definitely a moment where it's like, ooh, well, maybe we can get Celtial back into this. I mean, and very much have this pickup from... right where Hollow Mountain left off, and that see a lot of benefits to it. We gradually talked it around. It's like, let's do a different story. We just did the dungeon story. Let's do something that's a little more urban. Curse of the Crimson Throne just had its Deluxo Ultimate edition come out, so let's play with some of that stuff. And hey, Wes, you know what you like as much as Celtial? Almost as much as Celtial? Hell Knights. Oh, and there's some Grey Maidens. Oh, and maybe there's some devil stuff. So, okay, I can be bought.
All right. If it's not too late, you could have Quinn carrying around a wanted poster of Celtial, and he, like, shows it to Sione, and she's like, oh, I know that guy. I hate that guy. And Quinn's like, I hate this guy, too. Let's be buds.
Oh,
that's a really good idea. I really like that a lot. There's still time to play. Like the first 2 issues are written and off to Dynamite already, but yeah, that would be a pretty funny Easter egg. I like that idea.
Now,
just as long as the dialogue is "Let's be buds," then that's what makes the scene.
Nice.
Now, the Pathfinder comics. This will be the start. Issue 1 of this line will be issue 53. These comics have gone.
Wow.
These comics have gone on far longer than tie-in comics should ever. I mean, the quality is far better than any tie-in comics. Why did this? Why? Why is this still a thing? Why hasn't this been canceled 3 years ago?
Well, I think in this case, I mean, Dynamite very much has their operation down, and you'll see the series that they do, like. They know the comics industry. They know how many issues sell. They know the virtues and the vices of having more issue 1s than you have, like, issue 47s. So there's always something fresh. There's always something new. We're always trying something different. I think with Pathfinder, you've got sort of a unique situation because this isn't just a license. This isn't just the Baby Huey estate is licensing their great property out to this other company. This is a business deal between 2 companies, but you've also got the creators are fundamentally invested in telling these stories and creating new content personally, and as using it as an opportunity to further explore our world and our brand. So rather than just seeing this as like, oh yeah, Pathfinder could have a comic or a lunchbox or flamethrower or whatever, and just smacking the logo on the side of it, this is something that, even though it's happening out of house, we put a lot of time and local resources on, and it's not something that we can really do ourselves, and Dynamite's getting us into places that we'd never be able to, or just like, comic book shops in a way that we'd never be able to get just ourselves. So it's been a really satisfying partnership, and has really allowed us to do a ton of fun things. And I know one of the biggest things that I get at the office is we've got a lot of folks there who really want to write for the comics and really want to tell our own stories. Like Crystal Frazier has, done some comic work in the past. Owen Stevens and Jason Keeley are both very keen to be involved. Mark Moreland and Amanda Hammond-Kuntz also have expressed interest in playing with this stuff. So even when Eric or myself or Sutter get burned out, I mean, there's a ton of folks there who have their own pet characters and their own stories that they're passionate about that they want to get out there. So long as Dynamite wants to keep doing this, I think we're down.
Okay.
So we're starting to get some questions from chat, and they're not really comic related. So I'm just going to wrap up the comic stuff, and if people then want to go back and have comic questions, wonderful. So, what about the back matter, the RPG material? How are you going to tie that into the stories?
So it's really a pretty interesting situation that we've got with Rune Scars and its ties to Curse of the Crimson Throne. Since Crimson Throne is this big, huge adventure path with a ton going on, what we don't want to do is tell a story that is either A, bigger than the adventure path, because that's almost impossible in 5 issues, or is just sort of irrelevant. But then there's the question is like, are we telling the story before Crimson Throne? Well, then we can't play with all the neat things. Well, are we telling it afterwards? Well, then many of the neat things are gone. So we're telling a story that's happening really over just a matter of days during the beginning of actually 7 Days to the Grave, the adventure that I wrote for Curse of the Crimson Throne. So we've got sort of this very particular space where very interesting things are happening, but there's a lot of specificity. So what we're doing with the back matter is we're using that to not just sort of explain where things are in time, explain some of the interesting things that are going on in the city, but also to give you a few neat little encounters and new rules options that, is first of all a reason that I think a lot of people come to the Pathfinder comic for, more Pathfinder stuff. But also to sort of give you some neat ways to maybe do a few little side adventures, or maybe get some new context or new details for your Curse of the Crimson Throne campaign. So if you're playing, or if you liked that adventure path and you want a little bit more, or some more options, or just another perspective on it, this is something that we're going to be trying to provide throughout the entire 5-issue series. And that's all going to be written by Jason Keeley. He's been an editor for us for a good long while. He did a bunch of the writing for the back matter of Worldscape. And Jason is now a developer working on Starfinder. And he freaking loves comics, and he loves this content, and he's been doing a great job. So we're glad to have him back.
Taking some questions from the audience.
The one other thing that I definitely need to note as well is that the art for the series is being done by Ediano Silva, who's freaking incredible. Like, we've worked with a ton of great artists on this series, or in series before this, but Silva has been just really blowing us away. We've been getting new content almost every day, and the amount of detail that he's getting into this has been fantastic. But what's also been great is how much since it's set in Corvosa, we're throwing him like just a ton of reference in his ability to process this stuff and really take the next steps and explore some of this stuff from that street level perspective has really blown us away. So like I said, we're just starting to see the first, actually, I think we've seen all but one page of the first issue so far. Yeah, it's freaking great. We're couldn't be more pleased. So if you're not already familiar with Ediano Silva's work, definitely check him out. He's been freaking incredible.
I know him a little bit from the Grimm Fairy Tales.
Yes. That's where I first saw his stuff, and I'm really impressed.
Is he doing the covers?
You know what? Honestly, I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
Okay,
we'll get sure, Wes. We'll wait.
We have a comic-related question.
Okay.
Thomas LeBlanc asks, will the comics have maps in them?
They sure will. We're going to continue to do the posters with maps on the other sides and little mini encounters and the whole shebang. We were just having a conversation yesterday about what we want the first things to be. And yeah, folks seem to really dig it. And, well, actually, I mean, throwing it out there to chat. I mean, y'all dig that? You want to keep seeing more Pathfinder rules content and game content in the back of these? Let us know. And if you don't, well, Lord knows that we can run on at the mouth and do more comics and more comics and more words and more pages. But I really think one of the things that brings folks to the Pathfinder comics is that there's actually game material that they can use in their game, and they can get the content that's really attracted them to the adventure paths in the series and so on and so forth. So it's a neat little thing that not every comic on the shelf has.
Yeah, when I was running Rise of the Rune Lords, I actually used 2 of the mini maps, one of which with the encounter as it was printed in the book, and that's not the kind of stuff I usually do, but my players went off course and I needed something quick, and those were fancy. Fancier than anything I could draw.
Nice, that's awesome. Working as intended.
The very quick instant poll seems to be the answer is woot. Yes, 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 please, yep.
Nice. Good. We will keep doing that thing.
Alex also has Alex Agunas, the network's very own, has I believe it's a comic related question. He says, "Can we get a Kermaga storyline?"
There was an early draft of this adventure path, or of this adventure path. Good lord, of this comic series, where since Kermaga is very much one of Sutter's pet areas, where we were talking about going to Kermaga. We ended up backing off on it just because we wanted the focus to be as much as possible on Corvosa. One of the biggest criticisms that we've ever gotten about Curse of the Crimson Throne in general is just like, you spend all this time in the city and then you go over there. That was something that was kind of ringing in the back of our heads with this, where it's just like, it's really cool, but by the time we get the characters to some place, by the time we establish Corvosa, set up a plot, and then have to take it to somewhere else, we're probably going to be running out of space. So for this, we decided not to do it. But one of the nice things about having myself and Eric and Sutter, and hopefully soon others, working on this series, is that you're going to see plenty of self-indulgence from the creatives who have come up with all of this stuff and have been working on these places for years and years and years. So if you know that somebody has a pet X, Y, or Z, as soon as you start seeing their names related to these comic books, the chances of seeing those pet nations or places or characters come up is pretty high. I mean, that's why we've got Celtial in there. I mean, that's why we're doing Corvosa and Hell Knights and Grey Maidens and Devils and stuff like that. And then Sutter, bringing in Quinn, which is one of his favorite characters, and all of Worldscape for Eric. So, I mean, we definitely try to indulge ourselves with these, because also, I mean, not just because we can and that's fun, but I feel that we write the best about the material that we're passionate about and that we're excited about. So again, while not for this one, so long as Sutter is working on these, and I suspect that's going to be a good while to come here, the chances remain pretty high of more Kermaga content.
Also, Daigle's in chat, and he says he would seriously love to do a Kermaga AP. And so, of course, everyone in chat is insisting that Kermaga AP confirmed.
Oh, goodness.
Nice.
Of course, Scott Melville...
Also, Alex is saying that an Ustalov comic is confirmed now, too. Just so many exclusive things coming in.
Yeah, right?
Well, Scott Melville asked a really good question. We've talked a lot about Kermaga, but he wants to know, why should I even care?
About Kermaga or the comics or
about
the
Kermaga,
world?
Yes.
Kermaga's interesting. When we were first defining Varissia as a whole, James Sutter wrote an article in issue 3 of Pathfinder Adventure Path that was just a big overview of Varissia, the country. And Sutter's background in fantasy is less steeped in like the traditions of Dungeons and Dragons and Tolkien, and more in modern authors and modern sci-fi and whatnot. So if you look back at that article, there's a ton of weird crap. I mean, it's much of it we never explain, but there's like Crystalline, which is like this whole like weird city frozen under a globe of crystal. There's Mundatai, which are just these like weird spires. There's a hole that maybe goes to hell. There's something else that Sutter is always just casually like, oh yeah, the space elevator, which is like, some of that stuff has been like ramped up or ramped back or skewed this way or the other over the years and as we refine things. But a lot of us were a lot more audacious in the early days when it was just like, ooh, what can we get away with? But Karamaga is the one place that like a lot of folks really latched on because it's this weird city that I think Sutter was really inspired by China Mieville's work and like Perdido Street Station and whatnot, where you've just got this city that is as much a monster city and is as much like driven by this weird culture of outcasts and like strange wizards and people from all across the world, and some of which are sentient monsters and some are just like normal people and whatever have you, and they've all sort of come to this spot for one mysterious reason or another, and it works, or at least it hasn't fallen apart for hundreds or even thousands of years, and it's got this weird history and yada yada yada. So it's this place that's just it's sort of this focal point for weirdness. And that's attractive to a lot of people, and folks really dig that. So Sutter has since done like a whole campaign setting book on Karamaga. He explored it quite a bit in The Redemption Engine, his novel, his second novel for us. Yeah, definitely. It's got a cool following, and he definitely takes every opportunity that he can to explore it, and it's really neat. While it looks like we're going to have to wait a bit longer before Adam Daigle's Karamaga Adventure Path, I mean, definitely a bunch of folks want to play with that stuff. So while we don't have any immediate plans to revisit that in the near future, and certainly nothing that we've announced, a lot of folks besides just Sutter dig that. So yeah, it's definitely on our top 100 lists of places to play with more.
All right, well, since you brought up Pathfinder Tales, I'm going to skip ahead to Alex's other question. Would you consider bringing Pathfinder Tales characters into the comic?
This question then gets echoed by several other chatters.
Short answer, yes.
Confirmed.
Longer answer, we haven't done it yet. And I'm sure, like, there was a moment where it's just like, have we? And I don't think that we have. Had frickin' Red Sonja and Tars Tarkas and whatnot, but no one from our books. So yeah, we definitely would. The opportunity just hasn't come up yet. What we probably wouldn't do, and something that we talked around at one point, is doing essentially comic novelizations or comicizations of novels. So we're probably not going to, at any point soon, like, do Prince of Wolves as a comic. We're pretty happy with with the group that we've established, and telling new stories and telling their stories and the opportunities and the flexibility that allows. But yeah, having like, a variant Jagari or like Salim or Larsa show up is definitely something we'd consider. And actually, now that I'm thinking about it, when Sutter and I were first talking about what we want to do with Rune Scars, there was a point where it's like, well, maybe they do go to Ustalov, and maybe the heroes do meet up with like Larsa and Salim and have a like whole Pharasman themed spooky adventure, and we'll get really self-indulgent and have our novel characters in there, and that'll be great. And then we're like, maybe we should ramp it back and do a story that more people than just us care about. So.
Larsa and Salim just sitting across from a table each other. You're the best. No, you're the best. Go on.
There was a lot of talk about like those characters would not get on well together. That would be really fun.
All right. Amanda in chat wants to know she would buy a PFS flamethrower, especially if it allowed a reroll at a PFS table.
We have an interesting. I gotta find it. We have from Scott Melville. He is suggesting that you should include really powerful PFS options that are only available to players if they have physical copies of the comic at the table.
That seems like a really good one. Really powerful, really maybe broken, maybe. Yeah, I like that a lot. That's a good idea. We should do that.
Justin Sluter wants to know when we're going to see your next PFS novel. Not PFS novel, Pathfinder Tales novel.
That's a good question. Right now, I've got a few fiction schemes that I'm working on to go 100% the like filthy self-promotion route. I put together a Patreon a few months ago just to sort of... Nothing happens without a deadline. And if left to my own devices... things will take forever. So I set up my own Patreon to give me a reason to further develop my own world building, my own side fiction projects, and also because I do a lot of streaming here on Twitch at Wesley Schneider, which you can check out. I'll drop my name there in chat if anybody wants to follow along. That's all stuff that I really enjoy doing. So I put together a Patreon that would allow me to essentially have people to report to do this stuff. So I've got some world building things on there already. I've got some fiction things already, and then every Sunday I stream. And the first Sunday of every month, I also do an Ask Me Anything stream, which is actually this Sunday. So if you get the opportunity, check me out on Twitch or look me up on Patreon, and you'll see some of the weird schemes that I've got in the works.
And speaking of your world building, Yasumoto wants to know, as more content gets released for Galarian, it's all set in roughly the same time, with events from each AP not assuming that the others have happened. What are the chances we see some progress happen that takes events into account?
Probably pretty good.
All right. Vague, but powerful.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I think we're caught up, unless, Param, did I miss a question?
Nope, we're good. Thomas LeBlanc is requesting more Heroes of Might and Magic.
Oh, nice. I mean, that's awesome.
It's a fun game.
I just put up a video on my YouTube today of playing through some Heroes of Might and Magic 3. So I use my YouTube as pretty much my stream archive. So, and actually, since this is sort of related, James Jacobs, our creative director, and I have been gradually playing through some of the best/worst like Dungeons and Dragons games from the 90s. So he and I have been bumbling through SSI's Menzoberranzan for the last few months. And yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I've dropped in on that. You die randomly a lot.
I never said we were good at video games.
I'm just going to ask Thomas a question. Thomas, is it LeBlanc or LeBlanc, like Param's been pronouncing it? Because my French sense is tingling.
And I have no French sense.
I know. So while we wait for more questions to come in, why don't we talk about a Kickstarter you were involved in earlier this year? No, I guess late last year. Vampire Hunter D for Pathfinder.
What? Are people interested in that? I mean, I didn't think anyone noticed.
I got to be honest, I don't know the first thing about Vampire Hunter D. Right up to when I saw the subtitle was Messages from Mars, I was like, oh, Mars? All right. The few assumptions I had based on the title were dashed by the subtitle.
So, it was pretty interesting because Eric, like I said before, Eric Mono, our publisher, handles a lot of the licensing for the company and whatnot. And he made a pretty exciting contact with a company that had a hand in working with the the property Vampire Hunter D. If you're not familiar with it, Vampire Hunter D is a well, actually, hold on. Vampire Hunter D looks like this, and is a Japanese novel, manga, anime series written by Hideyuki Kikuchi. And it's been going since the late 80s. It's probably, for a lot of Americans in the 90s, Vampire Hunter D was probably their first introduction to anime, period. Part of what made it very accessible and very appealing is that first it had this incredible artwork by Yoshitaka Amano, who many folks are probably familiar with him from his work on like the Final Fantasy series, but just this brilliant artist. And it's accessible in that it's a fantasy. You've got, your black hat wearing swordsman who like rides a horse and fights monsters, and there's demons and there's monsters and there's vampires, there's touchstones, there's things that the American audience gets, but then it's so weird, and there's this history that's implied behind it that an American audience has like no access to. So it's this series that had been going on for probably more than a decade before it even got to the US. So it's got all this built up lore, and then if you're an American in the 90s, all you have is this 2-hour movie that is just chock full of, okay, this is all awesome and I recognize this now, but then all of this is incredible and I have no idea what any of it is. It's just cool and weird and I love it. So that was definitely my experience and my introduction to Vampire Hunter D. And then I went on to like pick up the manga and the novels and so on and so forth. So Eric comes back from a trip at one point, and we're out getting lunch, and he asked me, because like Vampire Hunter D might have had a pretty significant effect on my aesthetic. And like the things that I like. He gets back and he's like, so what do you know about Vampire Hunter D? And my response was everything. And he just laughed. He's like, okay, because blah, 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 there's this company, a thing, they're doing a Kickstarter, they were coming to us, maybe we could do a Pathfinder thing. And yeah, I just completely jumped on that. So it's sort of an on-the-sly project. It was something that we publicized a little bit on Paizo.com, but it was largely in relation to this comic book series, Vampire Hunter D, Message to Mars, that Stranger Comics was doing, which is this Hideyuki Kikuchi story that had never been translated into English, and they were not only translating it, but they were making a comic book out of it. So that was the Kickstarter, and if it reached a certain stretch goal, Paizo would throw in a Vampire Hunter D official Pathfinder role-playing game accessory. And we reached that stretch goal, and we ended up producing that. And I wrote the whole thing. Sarah Robinson did the art and the layout for it, and it looks incredible. And it's got a whole new class in it. It's got the Vampire Hunter class, which, to be clear, is pretty much me kit bashing a class that is equal parts... now I've got to remember. Shoot. Is equal parts sort of like Ranger and Hunter, and well, I guess Hunter and like sort of Inquisitor and sort of Paladin. So you've got like all of this sort of stuff that ties together. It's mostly Hunter, but like the Hunter, instead of having a bunch of like animal stuff, has a bunch of like creepy bits, and then a bunch of new abilities. So it's that sort. It's sort of most like the hybrid classes in the advanced class guide, but just draws in themes from all over the place. But then there's some new monsters in there, and there's a short adventure, and there's a ton of feats, and there's a whole little feat system that allows you to have like a countenanced carbuncle, a little parasite that lives in your hand, just like D has. And then some other archetypes, especially for folks who are big fans of the movie Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust. It's got an archetype that essentially allows you to be the character Grove from that, who's this weird kind of psionic, like he sort of summons his own soul to be a badass and fight for him. It's really cool. And then just like a bunch of other stuff like that. Oh, and then also sort of gives a primer on the world and how to run a Vampire Hunter D themed campaign. So yeah, it's this 32-page thing that now that I've got everybody really excited about it, you can only get as a backer of the Kickstarter that ended in the past.
Oh.
Enjoy! So I feel like a little bit of a schlub telling anybody about it at this point, because it's really neat, and it came out being really cool, and the art's fantastic. I'm really pleased with the work that got done on it, and oh my god, it's like Vampire Hunter D in Pathfinder, and I got to write it, and it's like, that's so freaking cool. And you sort of can't get it. So I'm not saying that the situation that we are in right now, where it is a thing that is in the past, and you can only see it if you have a friend who backed it, that's the only way that you'll ever be able to get at it. But right now we have not announced any other methods by which the larger community might be able to get their hands on it. So it's a thing, it's cool, it exists, I'm super jazzed about it. But stay tuned, and we'll see if maybe there's something more that gets done with that down the road here.
Yeah, Diving Rhino just wants to double check, can it be released as a PDF?
There's a lot of options and a lot of possibilities. This is tricky because it's something that we're doing as part of a partnership with another company, with another property holder, then with a company that is a company that's in another country. And this is also, I'm not going to say Vampire Hunter D is like Japan's Superman. I mean, that's going way too far. But okay, maybe not way too far. So, it's just a property that the owners and the authors are very... They want to make sure that it's being treated right and treated respectfully. And they have made a certain deal. If anything else gets done with that deal, that is another conversation to be had. So it is not my place to go on and be like, here, get your hopes up. But who knows?
Scott Melville suggests you play it and stream it on Twitch, and I guess he'll take diligent notes.
Now, that's not a bad idea.
All right, then.
Totally
get your note pen ready.
Yeah, right. So, maybe there's something there.
It looks like chat's been super active, but people mostly just seem to be having a conversation that I'm sure you'd like to be part of. They're all talking about their first anime experience and stuff.
Nice.
But questions have dried up. We've had you for over an hour now, actually 2 hours technically when you count all issues. So, why don't we just wrap up by saying, what are you excited about for Pathfinder for Starfighter from Paizo in 2017?
Yeah, Starfinder's overplayed, so whatever there. Starfinder's the big thing. It'll be awesome. It's actually shipping out the door here in like just a couple of weeks. So, and that's been exciting because there's a point with every book where it's funny that Jessica Price, our project manager, just identified this, and I can't agree more. There's a point with every book where it's like, it is theory, it is outlines and ideas, and people are writing it, and it's words on pages, but it's sort of a nebulous thing. And there's a point in there where it's just like, I have no idea how this will ever become a book, like how this will coalesce. So there's that whole span of just like, we'll keep going, like, I'm sure it'll be fine. And but there's a lot of hope involved. But then one day it sort of clicks over into like, oh no, this is actually a thing, and this is going to happen, and we've got this handled, and this looks cool, and people are going to frickin' love this. That click just happened like a week ago, and now we're seeing pages. I mean, it always happens like while it's an art. I mean, that's part of their magic that goes beyond just like layout and art. But yeah, we're starting to see pages now that look great. They don't look just like a Pathfinder book. There's a lot of really innovative and in some cases sort of audacious tacks that are being taken, and it looks cool. So that's been really exciting, and that's going to really be, you guys are going to be so sick of hearing about Starfinder by the time Gen Con rolls along, like you don't even know. So I'll sort of leave that for the months to come. But one thing that actually, a couple of things that we've got that are pretty exciting. Strange Aeons Adventure Path just wrapped up. Adam Daigle did a freaking incredible job with doing, like, the best spooky AP that we've ever done. Couldn't be cooler. So if you guys haven't gotten in on Strange Aeons already, it's out there now. You can read it from start to finish, and it's freaking cool. So really check that out. We've also got coming through in just the, well, actually, folks are, now that I think of it, probably starting to get it here about now, the first Iron Fang invasion. So, and that's Crystal Fraser's first adventure path that she's wrangling all by herself, and that also looks super cool, and is much more like where Strange Aeons is really like Lovecraft and spookiness and so on and so forth. Iron Fangs is so much more, I can't say back to basics, but it's themes that I think are going to be really refreshing for folks who are there for a cool adventure with heroes and dwarves and twisted fae and like badass monsters just being really cool and so on and so forth. So it's really, you're leaving the pool of Strange Aeons, just this weird sort of chilling pool, and jumping right into the hot tub of this high fantasy adventure. So I think it's going to be a pretty stark change for folks, but I think folks are going to dig it. So those two APs, just wrapping up and just getting started, are super cool. And then we've also done something a little different. In the next few months, we're going to be releasing Pathfinder role-playing game, Adventurer's Guide, which is going to be really exploring organizations of the Pathfinder world. And James Jacobs and John Compton had a huge hand in the development of that. And it's something a little different from our core rule books, but it's a little bit of an experiment, and it came out, we've just sent it to the printer a couple of weeks ago, and it came out being really cool. A ton of cool options that go beyond sort of the generic fantasy that I think sometimes we sort of lean to in the hardcover lines. This is taking a much more flavorful tact with things, and yeah, we think folks are going to dig it.
Yeah, after the Villain Codex was the crunchiest book from last year, I don't know what to expect from the hardcover line anymore.
Yeah.
Like, I thought Villain Codex would just be an a GM book, but there's so many things there's characters I want to build out of the options that are in there.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, Adventurer's Guide might be the book of the year. I don't know.
Oh, and then I completely forgot. We just got, just yesterday, the first printer proofs of the Bestiary 6, and that, if you had told me 10 years ago that we were going to get to Bestiary 6, I would have called you a liar. But we did, and it's cool, and like, dude, there is some high-level stuff in there that is going to ruin some people. So yeah, if you're a GM who was looking for the big guns, yeah, hold tight.
So the bestiaries usually do have like a set of themes, monster sets that they introduce. So what kind of themes do we have to look forward to in Bestiary 6 besides just TPK?
Besides TPK?
Okay. In addition to TPK.
It's like the big guns. Let's see what else. Definitely playing with some of the high level stuff is something that we've held that in reserve for a long time. So it's just been like, all right, finally, like, why are we keeping this powder dry? I mean, let's actually do something with these characters and that stuff. So there's a lot of that, but in keeping with that, a lot of these big bad guys need servants, need helpers, and also, I mean, not everybody's playing a 47th level campaign, so we need to make sure that there's content for all levels of play, and that there's cool stuff, and there's new monsters that are usable for the entire audience. So you definitely get the big guys. There's a ton of servitors in there that are tied into these larger organizations and larger groups, but then there's also just a ton of stuff that you tend to expect. I mean, that is sort of not on any particular theme. It's just cool. So I don't want to steal too much of James Jacobs' thunder, because he was really one of the main architects of this book. But he came up with a whole new family of oozes, which I know. It's like, I know what everybody's thinking right now, being like, oh, good, sell us on the oozes. Finally, I'm here for that top shelf ooze content. No, it's actually really cool. Like, the whole, he came up with these they're called blights, and they're these, whole kind of, terrain ruining, plague creatures and whatnot. And it turns out that you can have a really cool, evocative, interesting, story-driven monster that also happens to be an amorphous horror, which, if anybody at Paizo is good at doing amorphous horror, it sure is James. So, and then just a ton of other weird stuff like that. There's sort of a new take on lycanthropes, but for bugs. So, Adam's all behind that. Speaking of Adam Daigle, I know that he did a lot of work with he wrote the new Sock Hills in this one. He and I put together Sock Hills as a new creepy outsider race in the last bestiary, but Adam has very much adopted those, and he's become their patron saint. I only wrote one monster in this whole thing, but I wrote the Daitengu, just the traditional Japanese tengu that has kind of the red face and the long nose. We just realized we'd never done that monster, so got him in there. And some other stuff from world folklore and mythology, but then Pathfinder lore and just all over the board. So it's a really good, beyond the TPK fodder, it's a really good sampling of cool Pathfinder monsters.
Excellent.
Yeah, I found out a couple of episodes ago when we had Adam and Crystal on that apparently oozes still a thing that people want more of.
Yes, more oozes.
Crystal in particular is a really big fan of oozes. Every now and then we have brainstorms about hey, we've done books on demon hunting or books on hunting vampires or whatever. What other monster should we do? And she every time is just oozes. I want the book on oozes. It's like, someday.
I want oozes revisited.
What's that?
I want oozes revisited.
Because your ideas are bad and you should feel bad.
Yeah.
Let's really get into the psychology of just stuff.
Yeah, we had Crystal on here a little while ago, and me and her were just oozes, yes, oozes, yes.
And then Chat was on your side. I never felt so out of touch with the Pathfinder community as that episode and that moment.
Some people just want to watch the world burn.
Now, unfortunately, it looks like our connection is about to die on us, so we might want to wrap this up before it wraps us up.
All right, Wes, where can people find out more about you online and at conventions?
Well, you can check me out at wesschneider.com. You can follow my Twitter at @FWesSchneider. You can also, as I mentioned before, check me out every Sunday at 3 o'clock Pacific Standard Time on Twitch at Wes Schneider. And like I said before, I also just launched a Patreon, and you can find that as well. And that's just at Wes Schneider. So yeah.
Excellent. All right. Well, thanks a lot, Wes. This was a lot of fun. Covered a
Cool.
lot of
Well,
ground.
thanks for having me, guys. Really appreciate it.
Excellent. Well, we'll see you soon, and otherwise, take care. And we will be right back to wrap things up right after this.
Awesome. Catch you guys later.
Later.
Bye.
Bye.
Wrap-ups and shoutouts. Wrap-ups and shoutouts. Wrap-ups. Wrap-ups and shoutouts.
And we're back. Let me
Thank you for joining us for episode 152 of No Direction, the Pathfinder News, Reviews, and Interviews podcast. Before you go, we've kind of crammed some news into the wrap-up section, so we're going to kind of rapid fire through some items of note for you as Pathfinder fans that we think you'd be interested in. First of all, Liz Courts, everyone knows and loves her. She is running an Indiegogo campaign for a Section 15 generator for the OGL. So some people can't wrap their head around what I just said. Other people are super excited about that. And the people that are super excited is anyone that's ever had to fill out a Section 15 in the OGL. So it's a fairly modest ask, and it's Indiegogo, not Kickstarter. And so I believe as soon as something is donated, it's hers. Param, back me up. I don't do Indiegogo.
She can set it up either way, but by default, yes. If you donate, she gets the money right away. Indiegogo don't have to fully fund; they can partial fund.
Well, she's at $425 of a $500 ask, so she's basically going to fund any second now. If you are a third-party publisher, have ever considered third-party publishing, or just want to make things easier on your friends who do publish things for third-party publishers, check out Liz's Indiegogo campaign. The official title is Section 15, an OGL generator for 3PP.
It is good. Writing a Section 15 makes me want to tear my hair out.
We kind of forget because Liz became synonymous with the Pathfinder community and being the in-between person for community and Paizo. But she started with the chat room. She started by being somebody that did the technical side of things. So this is in her wheelhouse. We just kind of forgot this part of her wheelhouse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, DM Tools originally started as just a bunch of these little web apps that you could, random treasure, random monsters, all kinds of cool stuff.
Speaking of things that she did before she worked for Paizo, there was a Wayfinder announcement from Editor-in-Chief Tim Nightingale, Timidius, on the forums. So Wayfinder has been twice annually for its entire existence. It does a print issue at PaizoCon and then a PDF issue Christmas-ish. Mm-hmm. Well, Timidius finally announced that as great as Wayfinder is, and it is consistently great, there's just been a little less steam in that engine, and so he just doesn't want to let it putter out. Instead, he wants to refocus it, and with issue number 18, it's changing to annually. And it's actually, numbers-wise, it's super convenient because it means that the issue number 18 will be out at PaizoCon 2018. Mm-hmm. Issue 19 will be at PaizoCon 2019, and so on. So it was a good time to do that. I doubt that weighed into the decision, but it certainly worked out serendipitously. So it's a bummer that we're getting less of this free content, but I mean, we haven't talked about Wayfinder nearly as much in the last couple of years, to the point that we missed announcing the call for submissions for the last 2 issues, I think. So I totally get where Tim is coming from, and he's a busy guy, so he might as well make sure he gets one amazing issue out every year instead of, risking getting 2 only great issues out.
Yeah, I mean, Wayfinder's an amazing piece of fan product. It's kind of like the comics before it. Every time I see a new issue come out, I'm like, how has this not been canceled? Good things should not last this long. I'm glad they are, but I'm just used to many years of fanboy disappointment that these good free initiatives and tie-in products just disappear because it's impossible to keep steam up. So I'm glad that the project is continuing, and this announcement wasn't the last issue of Wayfinder.
All right. Like I said, we're going to rapid fire through some things. So people may have noticed that on Kickstarter, Christina Stiles has launched a campaign for the Book of Passion, which is listed as OGL 3.75 mature audiences. Maybe we'll talk about this the next time we have an episode, but by then the campaign will be over. So if you're interested in that, if you're interested in the surprisingly long lineage of this type of book for Dungeons & Dragons and Pathfinder type games, check it out. I believe that she can handle it with a mature hand, and she's actually going to be the subject, or actually the writers of this book will be the subject of next week's third-party people. So you're not going to get an interview on the podcast, but you will get it on the website. So many things I want to talk about. Elder Dice, Lovecraftian themed dice for all tabletop games. This is on Kickstarter right now. We were talking about Strange Aeons earlier. So these are dice. It's a full RPG set of dice. But the real story with this Kickstarter is that it's got an awesome book-themed dice container. So check it out. It's called Elder Dice. It's by David LaRocca. Google it, Kickstarter, search it, and just look at the beautiful presentation of this whole thing, and it's not that much more expensive than a regular set of dice. So if you're playing in Strange Aeons and like me, you like having themed dice to characters and your campaign setting, I recommend checking these out for that character. And keep going, Param. John Bracer Enterprises. They've got a bundle on Drive-Thru RPG right now. It's called the Big Book of Everything, and it is literally everything that John Bracer Enterprises has published for Pathfinder from their first book, which they're one of the first people that we talked to in like year one of No Direction. So there is a lot of content in this, and it goes all the way up to the end of 2016. So you're getting over $200 worth of books for less than $20.
Wow.
Yeah. These bundles have been a popular way of getting older content that's still good, but kind of out of consciousness into people's hands. So I'm glad John Bracer Enterprises is doing it because, yeah, they have released a lot of content, and stuff, especially for my Kingmaker campaign, got a lot of use in my game. I cannot give any details except to say that that Blind Ferret will be launching a Kickstarter on March 13th. It is part of Kickstarter's new one and done style of campaign, so it's only going to be up for a week, which means that because our next episode is actually going to be in 3 weeks, it'll be with the Pathfinder Society team, the team behind Pathfinder Society, and it's going to be on March 22nd. So by then, this Kickstarter will be over. But if you know me, if you know what I'm passionate about, you will be super excited for this Kickstarter. And even if you have no interest in looking for group, I just want you to watch the video that we'll put together, because it is a ton of fun.
All right. And, oh yeah, next episode is a PFS episode with Tanya and the PFS team. You all probably want to watch that one. We don't have any details to talk about, but, these have usually been very good episodes.
Indeed. All right. Param, do we have time to go through what's been up on the network in the last 2 weeks?
I'd see. We can try.
All right. So, I think we're starting. Oh, yeah. It's everything that's up on the page right now. So, behind the screens, Fighting Intangibles was Anthony's article, which I know I definitely read, but I am drawing a blank on what it was about. Oh, yes. Okay. Sorry. The name threw me off, but it was actually about mental health. It was actually a very personal article by Anthony, and I kind of feel bad now that I'd forgotten its title. So there was a loss in Anthony's community, and so he just wanted to make it sure. He just kind of wanted to do a mental health check for the larger community, his reader base, and just to make sure that people knew that there are resources out there for people that are in stressful situations and just might not realize that there are people that can help. Then, in Wandering Monsters, Louis put together an encounter in a mysterious inn. The layout is the kind of things you might expect, but what I really liked is how he used the encounters. He used the NPC guide and the villain codex. Oh, no, sorry, just the NPC codex to populate it. So doing what we knew Pathfinder Paizo would start doing once the codexes started coming out. He actually manages to give a lot of content in not a lot of word count. So using online resources like the PRD, you're able to run a lot of cool different encounter options without having to do a whole lot of prep. That's kind of the point of the Wandering Monster series. And Luis continues to find new and interesting ways to deliver that kind of content.
The next on the episode was Alex Agunas' Guidance, Design 101. Lawful freelancers are the best freelancers. And we were just talking about Section 15s, which is convenient here because he goes into the details of what the OGL license is and what it means to freelancers, and what the PCL license, how they're different, what that means to make a game under either of these things. Exhaustive detail from somebody who has run his own publishing company and put out an inordinate amount of content that has, been put out under these licenses, so he knows what he's doing.
Next up, we've got Burst of Insight from Andrew Marlowe. His Plot Like a Villain series continues, and I'm really enjoying this because, man, everyone underestimates villains. Too often they're written like they're just waiting for the heroes to stop them. My favorite example of that is how bad Ultron is in Age of Ultron at being Ultron. Like, if your villain's main power set is controlling technology and your opponents are guys like Iron Man, and if the movie goes out of its way to show that Captain America has some kind of technology that brings his shield back to him, why didn't they use that anywhere in the movie? I have a lot of issues with Age of Ultron. All that to say that I'm really liking the series from Andrew. He's getting, he's making it so that you have not only smarter villains, but more memorable villains. And a more memorable villain makes a more memorable campaign and makes just everything that those players do overall have more impact.
All right, the next one was put together by... this is... Oh, sorry, I scrolled up in the wrong direction. One of our writers, Mr. Costello, did a third-party people with Purple Duck Games. Do you know anything about this one, Ryan?
Yes. So Purple Duck Games has been around, I believe, longer than No Direction has been around. And it's just one of those companies that I've always enjoyed, but kind of let fall through the cracks. They've never been on the show. And I've got like a bit of a personal relationship with Mark, who is the owner and publisher of it. And yet, just for years, never really made the time for him. So I'm glad that I finally did get this interview with him, especially because he's moving Purple Duck away from the Pathfinder compatibility license and doing more like that 3.75 philosophy where, yes, it's Pathfinder compatible, but it doesn't have that Pathfinder compatible branding, which is the kind of thing that I can say, and you can say, Param, but that he as a publisher can't say. So yeah, Purple Duck Games has thousands of PDF products out. I'm estimating. Maybe at least 1,000, though. Feels like they're just constantly churning out a lot of material, and a lot of it is good and memorable.
Next up is Monica Marlowe's Inspire Confidence, a new GM's Guide Part 3, Creating Fun NPCs. She does a good job with this article. It talks about the different types of NPCs and how you want to make them memorable and techniques you want to do to make sure that the players interact with them. Everything from villains to merchants to tag-alongs. Then
we've got Monstrous Physique from Luis again. He statted out the Chocobo. Everyone's favorite chicken mount from Final Fantasy. Pretty much the only consistent thing across all the Final Fantasy games. He just had a little fun with it. It's something that needs to exist, and he made it happen.
We won't have to settle just for axe beaks from now.
Axe beak's too violent to be a Chocobo.
All right, next up is Iconic Design from Alexander Gunas, and he... This is weird. He made a spider with 13 skill points per level.
Yeah, effectively. So what I liked about this is that it's a vanilla fighter. It doesn't have archetypes. It doesn't have... it doesn't multi-class or anything. He just managed to use options that are available to the core fighter. He went outside of core for those options. Mostly it was the Weapon Master's Handbook and the Villain Codex and Heroes of the High Court, and took a lot of feats and options that basically let you treat your use your base attack bonus as the number of ranks you have in a skill that you don't actually have that many ranks in. And so that's how, even though he's only a 12 intelligence, leaving plenty more points and use ability score stat points by to like have a proper fighter array of ability scores, he still managed to make him very, very skillfully competent in a strange selection of skills. It's not a great build. He says this multiple times, but he actually pulled off what he had set out to do.
Yes. Excellent. Now, the next one is from James Ballard. Is Dominating a Murderer Evil, Part 1. I don't think that any of the articles recently have prompted so much fervent discussion in a while as this one. Basically, he goes into the theory, is the enchantment school evil? Or should it be?
And as with most things, when you actually ask about the moral, like, why are some things in Pathfinder more morally good than others, you can't just ask that question. You have to kind of break down the entire morality system and the alignment system, which is a hotly debated section of the rules. But he's taking a very intelligent approach, especially because we often talk about, especially lately, agency of players, agency of characters. And that's pretty much what the enchantment school takes away. Mm-hmm. And if it's not okay for a GM to do it to a friend at the table, how is it okay for a character in an adventure to do it to other people in that same world?
It's an interesting theory. And like I said, a lot of fervent discussion has popped up around this one. So go check it out. Go check the responses. It's a good time.
And finally, keyword design, bubbles.
Mm-hmm.
Nick V's single word submission for keyword design this week was bubbles. And somehow I had an easier time coming up with a whole bunch of content for bubbles than I did for Rebel a couple of weeks ago. We've got the Poison Carbonator that lets you launch a poisonous bubble at people as a touch attack. Necklace of Air Bubbles, which is basically a necklace of fireballs, but instead of fireballs, it's Overland Flight. But it's a very flavorful magic item. And probably my favorite of it all is although I don't like the name that I chose, but it kind of went with it anyway, is the Hydrombulari. I told you I don't like the name. Anyway, it's a druid archetype that focuses on air and water, which would be a weird combination if somebody hadn't told me to make a druid based on the word bubble, which is basically what he did. And so you get a small air elemental animal companion and a water elemental animal companion. They can form a bubble around you that lets you fly around and protects you a little bit. And
can they clean every surface?
Oh, you know what? That's so the new spell is Trouble Bubbles, and it is partially based on Dow's Scrubbing Bubbles.
Oh, yes.
The commercials. I'm surprised that you made that same reference, because back, as I say on the blog, back in my BBS days, I downloaded some unlicensed Dungeons & Dragons 2nd edition, and it included a monster stat block for scrubbing bubbles. And it's just the idea that these things are just let loose to clean up a dungeon, but they've got such like powerful cleaning action that if they roll over the PC, he's going to get poked a lot. He'll only take like 5 points of damage, but it'll be like basically running through a car wash. Yeah, and that always stuck with me, and every now and then if there's a lull in a dungeon, I'll just be like, there's something coming towards you.
Oh my gosh.
Sudsy, and it leaves a gloss in its trail. And then, yeah, 1 damage, and we move on, never to mention it again.
Oh, and then one thing that's not on the site yet, but will be by the time that our listeners hear this, unless they're live, which me and Alex got together, and we recorded Private Sanctuary episode 300. And the title of it was How to Wizard Good. Where me and him... I
was a member of the chat that night. I got to flip things around.
Which is a very fervent discussion of me and Alex disagreeing on the various wizard strategies and caster strategies in Pathfinder and how to be effective and play those to their maximum potential.
Yeah, and I got to be honest, after listening, because I have asked you this multiple times, how do I play my character so I'm having more fun? It's not that I'm playing my caster wrong. It's that I don't get enjoyment out of playing a caster right.
Yeah, if you play a caster too, playing a caster is this little balance where you realize that this is Dungeons & Dragons and you're a caster, therefore you win. And it's how much do I want to ruin the fun for everybody else?
Well, I'm an oracle. I haven't reached that point yet. But
You're the worst of it. The second you start doing this high level divinations, man, it's over.
there is some talk, like MedTech is saying, that WoW, a new private sanctuary, was beginning to think it was gone forever. So a couple of things conspired there. One is that Alex did go back to school, and so he's been extremely busy. And then there was also the episode 300 cloud, just kind of hanging over it. Like, do we do a regular episode? Do we do a special episode? So I've kind of taken the reins. We're at some point going to do a special episode. And I'm just going to talk to all the past guests and be like, this is what the hobby was like then. This is how it's different now. But it's going to take some outlining and stuff, and it's going to take a lot of organizing. So expect it this year.
Yep. Excellent.
All right. Until next time, I am Ryan Costello.
And I'm Jefferson J. Thacker, also known as Parham.
And if you want to find the path, you need no direction.